Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. Today, you went to that place they call the Acropolis Hill. And I want to take a moment to tell you what you really saw. It is profound. Not for the historical reasons, but you see such a big picture of what we have been telling you now for over 2 decades. And I want to review with you a little of what the energies were that perhaps very few see. And then I want to project it onto the future. You're looking at Greek history. And we have said it before. Many would say that this is the place where so much thinking began. Thinking about self, about planet, about esoterics, about all things intellectual, about language and science, art, beauty, sculpture, architecture. And that there was so much advancement here in those areas so quickly. Indeed, if you go back as far as you can, this is the place where human beings started to examine God or the feeling of Creator in a very intellectual way. You can go to different places of the planet and you can see the beginnings of many kinds of beliefs. But in this particular place, you get to reveal something I'm going to identify. And what I'm going to identify now is spiritual evolution. It is so easy to see here. How it started, where it went, and perhaps where it's going. We've talked about the dispensations of energy that human beings have gone through that have to do with spiritual things. You would think that God would be self-evident, that a human being would be born and there would then be an intuitive sense that said there was a creator, and there is. As far back as you go, from the ancients who lived on the planet far before the Greeks, there was. But here you got to see it in a way that really paints spiritual evolution. It's interesting, but it's understandable that if there is a creator, that the first things that human beings would try to do would to be figured out who it is, what it is, and why it is. And in a very elementary beginning way, in spiritual evolution, you did not have the kind of esoteric thought you do today. Not at all. It had to start very, very simply. And what humans have done, literally since they began to operate with God, is to humanize God. It's understandable. That's all you have as a model, the psyche, the humanness. The greatest philosophers would humanize God. Even today, the greatest organized systems of spirituality continue to humanize God. But you saw it so clearly, did you not? On the Acropolis Hill. There you got the information of the 12 gods. Humans decided that God was a family. That makes sense. Because again, all humanity had was themselves. And so the model creator had to be like them. But they went the second mile in Greece. They made them dysfunctional. Now this is funny now, but they did it because that's who they were. And so it made sense to them that there would be disagreements and all of the things that humanity has with their gods. Now, before we go any further, I would like to bring up something. No matter who is describing God, no matter how elementary it is, whether it's in Egypt, whether it's in Greece, there is numerology involved that is accurate. Why 12? Why did Plato decide to split the soul into 3 intellectual parts? Even today, you teach the triad in so many ways, and currently in spiritual belief. So the numerology seemed to be accurate. There are many civilizations that had many gods, but none like this, for they intellectualized all of them. In Egypt, there were many gods. Sometimes through Egypt history, there was one god, Pharaoh. Unfortunately for them, he kept dying. And so then he was replaced. That then led to another system, because the Creator is not supposed to die. And so you have 12 immortals. That is a beginning. And you have to see what took place over eons of time, thousands of years. We sat in that which you call the state of Israel, not that long ago. And we told you that those who spoke Hebrew on that land, that you call the Jews, brought this planet a monotheistic God. And that was the next step. So you go from many gods to a monotheistic God. The master of love also spoke Hebrew. What an irony it is that the master was a Jew. And you see the evolution from many gods to one. You go from the dispensation, perhaps, of law to a dispensation of love. You moved into the dispensation of responsibility. And immediately you saw the issue. For 2,000 years, although you had a monotheistic God, it was still elementary. For now you decided to argue over who had it right. And even the major belief systems of the planet are split. One creative source, and wars about how to worship it. Like children in a playground, discovering the seeds of truth and not seeing what the truth really is. The dispensation of responsibility. And then there will be a further evolution, the final evolution, where they see the essence of God and realize that it applies to all humanity, that there is no right or wrong way to worship or to love God, and that culture can be different and appreciated and respected and understood. And there will be many ways, but all of them will be correct. For God is love. That is the step that you are now starting to move into. And in the process, those who are the most radicalized about what they believe is correct or not correct are the ones that will make the most noise. And that is because they start to see the devolution, the crumbling of the differences. Light starts to be greater than dark. And you start to understand that God is not intellectual. God is not like a human. God is love, compassion, so much more than anything that a human being corporally is. And that revelation is something that you can capture and live. And that God is a caring God, not a judgmental God. Today, when you look at the most modern belief systems on the planet, you still have a humanized God. A God who will punish you and watch you, who doesn't want you to do this or that. And that, my dear ones, will eventually go away. The dehumanization of God is at hand when you start to realize that the creator of the universe is not human, does not think like a human, and never has. This age of responsibility starts to put upon you some things that you should think about. You've always been told how to worship. You've been carried along by others who said, do this and do that. They tell you which direction to face. They remind you of the mythology. They tell you about dark and negative energy and how to avoid it. And all you do is follow the example and go from one place to another, hoping you get it right. Suddenly the light is turned on and you realize that none of those things are accurate. They've been put upon you by human nature. That God is light, and the mythology starts to disappear. The traditions that you would hold clear for centuries start to disappear because you start evolving. And in that evolution, I will tell you what's next for you. This is a group that is going to do ceremony. Ceremony is like congratulations of energy, of self. It's celebration. That's what it is. And in that there is epiphany and realization. And I want to tell you the premise that we have been teaching for so long. It's time to change the entire paradigm of how you work with God. You wait for others to give you instructions of where to worship, how to worship, when to worship, how much, how long. It's part of the structure of your life. But dear ones, it's not a box. The age of responsibility means that at any time you wish, you are your own altar. God is inside you. If somebody says you have several hours of free time on a tour, it doesn't close the door to celebration. It means you can go into the forest with others if you wish, or just across the street to visit a tree. And you can use 3 hours to celebrate all by yourself, because that's the freedom of God. Don't let an activity or a historical site or the history lessons get in the way of how you feel at the moment about God. Don't compartmentalize it. Know that you are one who can worship and celebrate the beauty of God in you, no matter where you are. In a closet, in a historic place that means nothing to sacredness at all. You are sacred. You are sacred. I feel a song coming on. And so it is. Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. Human beings who are sensitive react. They react to things that the crystalline grid holds and delivers. And what I'm talking about is this. The crystalline grid of this planet is set up to remember energy. And where things happen that are, let us say, dramatic, they stay. When you walk into a cemetery or a battlefield, sometimes there will be remembrance and you don't really know what you're feeling. But it is the crystalline grid that does this. That's its design. That part of the shift is going to rewrite this grid. And against all odds, it's going to start remembering celebration instead of drama. Now, this is hard to believe. It's also hard to believe that human nature can change. These things will be self-evident in the future. Already they begin. The things that happened in the cave, barbaric. You still see that today, but only a small portion. With low consciousness culture that we have told you would exist even during the shift, trying to drag things backwards into that kind of energy. And human nature today has shifted enough not to allow it. I want to tell you about another cave. The cave of creation is one of 3 areas where the human Akash is kept. This is what I'm going to call Akashic accounting. It really, really does not affect you. But this is what they would call the minutiae that some of the spiritual intellectuals wish to hear. They want to know how it works. And every single time we talk about how it works, you should take a deep breath, because everything, every system, every plan is to benefit you. The benevolence of God is seen in the fingerprint of nature and the planning for the human being. It is there. Your lineage is so important, human. What you have learned and what you do is so important. For you have passed a tremendous marker. It's a test of consciousness, but not a test that you are required to take, one that you gave yourself. Is it possible for humanity to lift itself out of the barbarian years and start a path that is far more commensurate or complete with a higher consciousness, benevolent human. And this is where you are today, on the way, just barely having passed the marker, but already old souls are taking the energy and moving forward with it. The cave of creation contains what I would call a crystalline record of the Akash of all humanity. When you leave this planet in death, you leave your Akash here. You don't take it with you to the other side of the veil, not to that beautiful place where you join with family and God and others. No, you leave the earth part here. It is a real cave, but there is multidimensionality throughout. You might say it is even in another dimension. It is not to be found and never will, but it is part of Gaia. Deep. The crystal stays there, literally with your light name on it, until you come back. And when you come back, dear ones, your first breath is the announcement that you are alive again and on the planet. Your first breath. That's because the first breath says it is you surviving as you, not within your mother, but you surviving as you. When you come back, dear ones, at that point in time, metaphorically and esoterically, you pick up the crystal, and all the information that is in it pours into your DNA. Your past lives, all that you have experienced, and you're on the path yet again, etching new occurrences and new events right into that record. That's the cave of creation. We have told you that there is a conundrum, a puzzle that is 3D within the cave. For the cave, it contains every human being who will ever be on the earth. And you will say, wait a minute, that's predictions. That's a set future. It is not, dear ones. That is spiritual planning. What you do when you get here is free choice. But there will be human beings coming that are planning on being here, and they will arrive, unless you change it. Now here's the hard part. That particular element of the cave, which contains humans who are not here yet, will change with what you do now. So it's constantly dynamic, but it contains this beautiful Akash of you. That's probably the most profound record on the planet. But dear ones, there needs to be two more. One is within you. That is a living record. And although I cannot explain it to you fully, a living record has a different dynamic than a static one. The static one is in the cave. The living one is so different. And yet we have told you that humans have the propensity to destroy themselves on a regular basis. You were going to do it yet again and did not. However, there had to be a living backup system. And that becomes the cetaceans of the planet. I would like to remind you something that I say each time I speak of whales. That your biologists have classified dolphins as whales. Therefore, when we say whale, we mean dolphins and whales. And that is why you feel what you do for them. They are not aware of the fact that they carry your Akash. But let me tell you, they are the only mammal who is aware of your consciousness. They are attracted to you. You can prove this yourself with the interactions of both of the dolphins and the whales, all cetaceans. At some level, they are aware of a consciousness of a human being, and they are attracted to it. The only mammal on the planet. Oh, you may say, well, what about our pets and our dogs and our cats? Dear ones, you breed them for that. We are talking about animals in the wild. Animals who will mostly run from a human, but not the cetaceans. They tune into you, and they come to you, because they carry at some esoteric level in their biology all 44 chromosomes. They carry you. And this is the minutia that I wanted to share with you, but not in the cave. Because I wanted to celebrate the fact that both the whales and you still survive. And it didn't necessarily have to be that way. You made this happen, dear ones. The reason this is important, I'll say yet again. The Akash is partly that of the galaxy. It must survive. There'll come a day, very far away for you, tomorrow for me, when the potential is that you will seed another planet with your knowledge. And when you do, everything that has ever happened to you will be in their DNA, will be in a cave on their planet, and some kind of animal that they have. This is a plan that has been in this galaxy for eons and eons. It is an important one. It is not clearly seen as to why it must exist this way. And someday that revelation we'll also discuss with you. But for now, it's good enough for you to know that this is how Spirit sees the family, in a beautiful way. In a beautiful way. I want you to continue the ceremony that is coming. And I want you to think on these things. You are part of the planet. Even your Akash is part of the planet. It's all over the ocean. It's in the earth. It's in every human. That is magnificent. You are magnificent. And so it is.